Do you ever get that feeling in your chest when you think about doing something you don't feel like doing? Maybe it's that homework you have to do. Maybe it's time to go to work. Maybe you have to get out of bed. These are things you have to do. You do them regularly. Maybe you would even label these actions as something that should be easy, but for some reason, it feels like there is this invisible resistance. Don't worry, I struggle with this too, and I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. So why do easy things feel so hard? Well, that's why we're here today. So let's get it started. Getting out of your bed isn't objectively a hard thing. It's just pulling the blanket off of you and standing up. And neither is sitting down and starting to do homework. But in our minds, the task feels like it's so much harder than it has to be. There is this weird dropping feeling in your chest when you have to do that thing you don't want to do. Now, I recently read this book called The War of Art, not by Sun Tzu, but by this author named Steven Pressfield. And he gives a name to that weird feeling in your chest. He calls this the resistance, a physical and mental feeling of discomfort, even when doing something that should be easy. In his book, he goes on to explain how it's much more than getting out of bed. This feeling of resistance follows you everywhere. Every time you should be exercising, eating right, sitting down to work, or doing your necessary chores, you get enticed into taking an easier option. Whether that to be scrolling, gaming, gooning, any form of entertainment or high dopamine activity. And what's really messed up is how your mind convinces you. You start to make these rationalizations, reasons for why it makes sense to do these bad habits. And the worst part is that the reasons come from your own thoughts, so they are incredibly convincing. Maybe you have something on today, maybe you're tired, maybe it's been a long day at work. It'll tell you anything you need to hear to make you steer away from what you actually should be doing. He compares this concept of resistance to the devil, which I totally agree with. But this devil of resistance tries to entice you with worldly pleasures, while the angels represent the part of you who want to become the best version of themselves. So these two sides battle, and for most people, the resistance wins. It successfully takes them away from their life's work, their missions, and their goals that would have made them a better person. And here is where I want to get into something important. What actually is the resistance? How can we explain this phenomenon that continues to hold us from our goals? Well, this resistance exists because of a gap in real versus perceived effort when doing something. The real effort of going for a walk outside is fairly low, but the perceived effort is high because you feel like you've got to do a lot of things just to go outside. And this disparity in the real effort versus the perceived effort of something is what creates this resistance. It's something that feels harder than it actually should be. And this is as a result of a part of the brain called the AMCC. This stands for the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And yeah, I know it sounds pretty sciencey. Basically, this region of the brain calculates perceived effort. It analyzes how much effort you need to put in to get a specific reward, and makes a conclusion on if it's worth it or not to do the task. If the reward is low and the effort is medium, you feel it's not worth it. It's not an equal exchange, and therefore the perceived effort of it is high. Because of this calculation that the AMCC does, when we need to do something that doesn't have a high reward but requires effort, we experience resistance. And on the flip side, if something has a high reward and requires a low effort, we experience no resistance at all. Just think about that for a second. In our modern day, we are exposed to an unhealthy amount of easy dopamine, or in other words, easy to do and highly rewarding activities. Things like social media, video games, and TV are all things that offer nearly no resistance when doing them, which means we naturally continue to choose these easy rewards. And this is due to humans developing technology faster than we can evolve with it. Because when technology didn't exist, there was no way to get this easy dopamine. And parts of the brain like the AMCC were not designed to handle this level of accessibility to dopamine. So when we look at our society as a whole, people buried in technology and letting the resistance stop them from building real achievements, it starts to become a much more important question. It's not just why do easy things feel hard, it's now how do I build achievement when my brain isn't designed for it? It comes with a better understanding of the resistance. Now, the AMCC, as a result of being a well-connected region of the brain, can use information from most other parts of the brain as well. It uses information like how hungry you are, how thirsty you are, how tired and how sore you are, and adds factors like those into the equation. This then contributes to how amplified this resistance will feel. In the morning, when you wake up, you're still tired. You haven't moved for a few hours, the bed is warm and it's comfortable, so the reward of getting out of bed is low, the effort of it is low as well, but these other factors that the AMCC calculates in increase the perceived effort significantly. If you remember a time where you were sick, pulled an all-nighter, were depressed, or had a hangover, you'll notice that the AMCC calculates quite harshly, and on those specific days you probably had a low motivation to do anything. Of course, feeling tired, being sick, being depressed, or having a hangover does naturally increase the real effort of doing things, but even so, the perceived effort still scales far higher than it should. Let's also think about it this way. If you are to get a good 8 hours sleep, are hydrated, ate well the previous day, and have done things to maximize your physical and mental state, you would seemingly have a lot of motivation that day, as the perceived effort of things are lower than usual. So here we come to a very obvious answer. If you want to make the resistance easier to avoid, just live a healthy, active, stress-free, and structured life. But we all know that's not happening. I mean, a lot of us here probably have commitments, jobs, education, social lives, addictions, whatever else. Things that stop us from optimizing that calculation. So what else can we do to lower the resistance? Well, it's an easy mental exercise. We've already talked about it a little bit. The AMCC seemingly amplifies the perceived effort of doing something, but that knowledge alone is more important than you think. It's only now that you know what your brain is actually doing when it wants to avoid something difficult, and you feel that resistance. So simply, I want you to practice realigning the real effort of something and the perceived effort that your brain is telling you. When you wake up in the morning, you can tell yourself that even though it feels difficult, you know it's actually way easier. It's similar to how you watch a magic trick for the first time and you think it's super convincing, you couldn't tell how they did it. But once the magician actually tells you how the trick is done, you'll be able to see what's wrong with it every single time. Now, you will still feel the high perceived effort of doing things, which in turn will use something else called willpower. Willpower is a currency also regulated within the AMCC, and if a task requires a high level of effort to complete it, willpower will be spent as a response. You can think of willpower as your ability to fight against the resistance. You can spend willpower to temporarily do something you need to do, even if it does take a lot of effort. But unfortunately, willpower is a finite resource, so at some point, we end up running out of it. The more you use your willpower, the harder it is to continue using it. Some people have a decent capacity, some people have no capacity at all. You may be able to relate this to some people you know in real life. Low willpower looks like chronic procrastination, impulsive decisions, and difficulty forming consistent routines. This actually sounds a little bit like me, and honestly, maybe it sounds a little bit like you as well. So maybe we have a low willpower, but then we have to ask ourselves, what does it actually take to get a high willpower? Because with a high willpower, you would find it much easier to stay productive throughout the day and work towards all of your hard goals without a problem. You'll actually find that a high willpower is found very commonly within athletes, business owners, successful people, and you get where I'm going here. Willpower isn't something you're born with, it's something that you develop. And we know people who have great achievements in their lives are people who trained their willpower and therefore beat the resistance. But don't let this discourage you. Maybe you're thinking to yourself right now, hey, I'm not cut out for all these grand achievements. I don't intend to have an incredibly high willpower. It sounds like too much work. But think about it a little bit differently. Do you want your chores, your routines, your goals to be easier and less draining? Well then, this is valuable for you to know, even if you don't plan to fully implement it. Now, a question I had to ask myself is, why is willpower so low to begin with? And it's not something as simple as just failing to train it, because even if not training it contributed to my low willpower, there is something far more important that was keeping it that way. And it's a habit I had for a long time. I got my first piece of technology when I was only 3 years old. It was a PS3 that my dad bought for me, and I used to play games on it. And I know you're gonna listen to me blame it on technology right now, but it's for the point I'm trying to make. It's important. So, by the time I was 5, I had my first iPad. At 9, I got my first phone. The PS3 turned into a PS4, then a PS5. Technology lived with me my entire life. I was into all the video games. Fortnite, Rocket League, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, Minecraft, all the big names. And I will tell you that this was genuinely the best time of my life. During the school holidays, I would play literally all day with my friends online, and in the evenings, I would watch my favorite YouTubers. It was genuinely peak life. I got older, and I eventually got into social media, like everyone else, and built a really bad social media addiction, like scrolling for literal hours every day. It was only at about 16 where I finally looked up from the screen, thankfully, a lot earlier than a lot of other people. But I had realized that I barely even remember my childhood, and I realized just how dangerous these things can be. It was around this age I asked these questions for the first time, like, what do I want to do in the future? What is something I actually want to be good at? How can I start making money? And yeah, of course, I still use technology to this day, as you can see, but I made crucial steps away from it, like not being so active on social media, I text using messages, and I try not to play games that often. Now, I'm not saying you have to do the exact same as I do. I still watch YouTube, and I still play games from time to time, and I also understand how difficult it is to suddenly delete Instagram or quit gaming after playing with your friends for so long. What I will say is that technology makes time go faster than it should, and as a result of consuming easy dopamine, you become satisfied with a life you don't actually want. When I tie this back into building your willpower, what I'm trying to get at is that a low willpower comes as a result of someone who feels satisfied. Resistance feels a lot easier to accept when your life doesn't necessarily feel like it has to change. If you do want your life to change, then you have to start fighting the force of resistance that is holding you back from the life you actually want. So, how do you train your willpower? How do you slowly start chipping away at the resistance that follows you everywhere you go? Well, it's said that willpower is built by doing things you don't like on a regular basis. This might sound like discipline, but it's not. Discipline comes with a preconception that it won't get easier the more you do it. For building willpower, it makes difficult things feel easier, because as you scale your level of willpower, the perceived effort of tasks you have to do become easier in comparison, because for each task you now expend a smaller percentage of your willpower. I started training my own willpower by doing small things every day, not some big 5-kilometer run every morning, because trying to go straight into the lifestyle you want won't be sustainable unless you have the level of willpower high enough to sustain it. When I woke up in the morning, I would get the blanket and just throw it off of my bed. When I wanted to eat something, I would do 5 push-ups before getting something to eat. I left a chocolate bar on my desk and told myself I couldn't eat it. It genuinely doesn't take a crazy amount of time in your day, but they are all small things that build your willpower. Alongside this, you actually start to build a sort of identity of having a high willpower once you start training it. If you can also identify that feeling holding you back as resistance, it helps you see it in real time. It helps you actually put a name to the thing that's holding you back, and it makes it easier to push past it. Now, once you've built your willpower to a level that you are happy with, you can start to do things that are a little bit harder. Take a cold shower twice a week. Do 10 push-ups now. Go on a spontaneous walk when you don't feel like one. And eventually, small habits that seem meaningless eventually start to show their benefits in your real life. Training the thought of, I'll do it anyway because I know it'll make me better, is far more beneficial than you think. This is what started to give me real progress. This set me up for starting to go to the gym consistently, sitting down and doing real work. And I will tell you that incorporating these small habits genuinely made a difference in how easy it was for me to pursue my goals and stay productive. Most importantly, I managed to better understand why easy things feel so hard. It was a lack of willpower, an addiction to technology, and a lack of understanding for how my brain actually perceives effort. Hopefully, for the people watching this video, with the knowledge I've given you, you can also get better at fighting your own resistance. Anyways, Thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and I hope I helped you think a little different. See ya.